Hi, I'm Tracey and I'm one of the educators at Audubon, Rhode Island. And this week we're talking about birds at Audubon at Home. Thanks for checking out and watching what we're showing you. So this book is all about how birds find their way. This time of year, birds are coming back from places where they spent the winter. And as they're returning, it's really exciting to see all of them come back. It's like seeing old friends. So this is by Roma, Gans, and How Do Birds Find Their Way? We can watch birds fly from tree to tree, from tree to house, and then back again. They seem to fly here, there, and anywhere. You probably have seen, this is an Oriole. It's a warbler. Look at these people watching in their backyard. If we watch birds all year round, we'll find that some seem to disappear in the fall when the days get shorter and colder, and they're flying south where it's warmer and they can find more food. It's always about food. Early in the spring, the first birds begin to come back. Every spring, birds return north to make their nests, lay eggs, and hatch their babies. We say the birds are migrating. Have you heard that word before? Migration? You have? Wow. So migrating is going from one place to another when animals move from one place to another, and it's usually about food. Isn't everything about food? They're moving from their winter homes in the south to their summer homes in the north. Here's an Arctic tern, which goes all the way from the tip of South America all the way up to the Arctic. It's incredible. They have the longest migration. Here we have barn swallows and a woodpecker called a yellow-bellied sapsucker. They like to leave these little holes. So once they come up north, they start to build their nests, and they'll build them in trees or shrubs. Some birds even under your porch or under your roof. If you have a basket, they might make a nest and lay eggs in that. Some go to the same nesting area every year, the exact same spot that they used the summer before. We don't need that. Long ago, people did not know that some birds migrate. So they thought that birds hid in holes in the ground and slept all winter. Isn't that funny? They just didn't know back then. They didn't have some of the technology that we have today. Some people guessed that birds spent the winter in the mud, inside ponds, in the water. They thought in the winter they went into the water all winter long. Now we know where these birds go, because birds start to migrate. People who study birds, scientists called ornithologists. Say that 5 times fast. Ornithologists study birds and they catch them in nests, in little nets. Sorry, not nests, nets. And they actually will put a little band, an ID band with a number on their ankle. Doesn't hurt the bird at all. Has anybody ever done that or seen that? It's really exciting. They weigh the bird and they take down notes about it and make sure it's healthy and find out everything they can, and they write it down. And this is called bird banding. It has a little number or code on the band. So you can actually, with binoculars, see that number, and you can trace where the bird flies. Some birds migrate for weeks and they stop along the way. Others fly only for a few days. And as I mentioned before, some fly thousands of miles when they migrate. We know that Orioles, the Baltimore Oriole, flies south to Panama. Panama is down here. between North America and South America. So they fly all the way down there and then they come back up in the spring. And barn swallows fly all the way from up here in Rhode Island down to South America, thousands of miles. Hummingbirds that come back in late April, so around now we should be seeing hummingbirds. They only weigh as much as a penny. That's how small and how light they are. Have you seen hummingbirds? You have. They're beautiful birds. They can fly over water for 500 miles. So they'll actually fly over the Atlantic Ocean. Sometimes these birds that migrate, they catch a ride on a ship, on a boat, and they rest. So they'll fly 500 miles without stopping. As I mentioned, Arctic terns fly more than 10,000 miles. They go all the way to the tip of South America, up here where Alaska is, up in the Arctic. And then they'll fly back down. So how do these birds know where to go? How do they find their way? That's a lot of territory. That's a lot of place to fly over. So how do they do it? Well, some birds follow rivers and mountains and seashores, but many birds find their way over the ocean. And there seems to be nothing there to guide them. So what do you think keeps them on a straight course so that they're not flying in circles? Any guesses? Let's see if you got it right. So ornithologists, those scientists that study birds, they have some ideas about how birds know which way's north and south. Both birds migrate both in the daytime and at night. And when birds fly by the day, they use the sun to guide them. And they can use the sun's position to figure out where north and south is. So if we follow the sun, we know the sun is usually rising in our part of the world. It rises in the direction of the east, and by about noon, it's in the south, and then it sets in the west. So they use the position of the sun to figure out direction. So they know that just like we do. So for birds to fly south in the afternoon, the sun must be on the right, okay? So it's the position of the sun, just like we figured that out too. Now, when birds fly at night, the stars help them to find their way. Scientists have tested this idea. Birds were put in a big planetarium, a big building where they shut off all the lights and where the positions of the stars would be. So a planetarium is kind of like showing you what the night sky looks like. And so they put birds in a big room called a planetarium where it had the whole Milky Way, all the stars in the sky, in the Milky Way. And the scientists noticed that the birds flew in one direction. When the pattern of the stars was changed, the birds flew in a different direction. So it was clear that the birds had noticed that the position of the stars had changed, and that told them to change direction. Birds are so smart. But birds can also find their way when it's cloudy, when they can't see the stars and they can't see the sun. So how do they know which way to go? Well, anybody know? You do? Good. You figured it out. So as you know, there's magnetic lines. There's magnetic north. And you use a compass. If anybody's heard of that, or maybe you've seen a compass. North, the magnet in your compass points to the magnet of North Pole. So these magnetic fields or lines circle the Earth, and it's strongest near the North and South Poles. So they believe, the scientists that study birds, that inside the birds' brains, they kind of have this built-in compass. And that helps them to figure out which way to fly towards north and which way to fly towards south. Just following these magnetic fields or lines, just like a compass needle. And if you don't know what a compass looks like, maybe your parents can show you. Now, there was a famous bird called a homing pigeon that was very good at finding their way. And when they were taken far away from their homes, they were usually able to find their way back. Scientists did experiments with these pigeons, and they put covers around the birds' eyes so the pigeons couldn't see. Even when they couldn't see, they were able to return home. So another kind of bird called a Manx shearwater, it's an ocean bird, was carried from England to Massachusetts, a distance of about 3,000 miles. In 12 days, it was back in England in its own nest. Isn't that amazing? So how do they know when it's time to leave south? Or at the end of winter, how do they know when it's time to start north? So scientists know that birds have a built-in yearly calendar, and the calendar tells the bird when the days become shorter, it's fall, and it's time to migrate south. When the days become longer, it's spring, and it's time to migrate north. So they have that built-in calendar. So here's some barn swallows eating bugs. Here's the yellow-bellied sapsucker, and here's an oriole. When fall approaches, birds eat a lot of food to store energy for their flight, because they know they're going to have to fly all that way. All at once, they're gone, and they've started to migrate. Several months later, the birds are getting ready to migrate again, and they must take their long journey north, and it's time to build nests, lay eggs, and raise their babies. Here's a hummingbird, there's an oriole, and a barn swallow. These are some of the birds that come back in the spring. And this shows you how high some birds fly. So you've got birds that fly way up high. Geese, some geese fly 30,000 feet up. You've got some seabirds that fly about 15,000. Eagles and vultures can fly about 10,000 feet. So here's the clouds. Look how high this geese flies, almost as far up as a jet plane. Ducks and geese, they're kind of in this 5,000 feet. Songbirds, a little over 1,000 feet. Okay, so kind of closer to the ground. We have solved some of the mysteries of birds and their migration. We know where birds go. We know how high and how fast they fly. Some birds fly as high as 5 miles above the earth, but most birds fly about half a mile above the ground. Some fly very fast, over 50 miles an hour, when the wind is blowing in the right direction. So when they have a good tailwind pushing them along, they can go really fast. That helps them to get quicker to where they need to go. So even though people have watched birds for thousands of years, we don't know all the answers. There's still many mysteries that we need to solve. And all the scientists and all the bird watchers can keep studying the birds, keep watching the birds, and help us figure it out. You can help us, and you can keep watching the birds in your backyard. And there's wonderful citizen science projects that you can be involved in and report what you notice about birds in your backyard. And it goes to the scientists, and they use that information. If you have an app called iNaturalist, that also, you can use that app to identify birds, And that information can be sent to scientists that are studying birds. And that will help us to answer even more questions that we have about these wonderful animals. So go outside and watch the birds, because it's an exciting time of the year. And I hope you enjoyed the story and you learned something new. So thank you so much. Bye.